Okay, I've been working a lot, I feel like today, and I'm kind of done and just trying to kill time. I've been wanting to kind of like talk about the books that I've been reading or the things that I've kind of like learned from them. And it's just interesting because I think like everyone has a different opinion, but obviously like the people that write these books I think have more credibility than obviously I do. It's like kind of up to you to decide what you want to take from it, but yeah, I don't know if anyone else has this problem, but anytime I like read something or like watch something, I won't remember what happened, but I'll just remember if I liked it or not, or like how it made me feel. So this is me kind of trying to remember and like remind myself of the things that I might have learned that didn't like maybe stick with me as well. But I think some of this did stick with me, but I'll just like kind of read it, I guess. But it's like the whole theme of like introspection and how it's not as, I guess, like important as you might think it is. But I'll just read it. It says, you might propose that introspection should be more reliable when it comes to other forms of self-insight beyond explaining past decisions. Even if it is more difficult than expected to articulate why we've made the choices we have, surely we're able to give an accurate reading of highly personal ideas such as our likes and dislikes or what we need to be happy in life, right? And then it says, but behavioral researchers have consistently found that even the assessment of our own life satisfaction is, in a word, malleable. How happy are you with your life? Well, it depends. It can be so many different factors that control that, and you might not even be able to like really pinpoint it or attribute it to like one specific thing. It could be like a bunch of different things. I think it's interesting, like the whole concept of like sense of self, because I feel like a lot of people I know, they're very sure of what they like and dislike. And I feel like I'm in this whole process of trying to like accept who I am and figure out who I really am, because I have this like notion in my head that like sometimes what I think I want or like is actually different than what is really what I think I want or what I think I'll like. Or okay, I said that like really poorly, but you know what I mean. So this book also talks about how like the notion of self is like super flexible, and like there is no like your authentic self because it's like always changing. And I'll read this like one portion, but your process of self-perception is context dependent, and introspection yields different information at different times, which I really believe. And your sense of self varies depending on who you're with. Identity is malleable, and personal preferences are constructed on the spot. But this isn't bad or anything. I feel like I always have this crisis of like, what do I really want to do with my life? And I feel like this book is trying to tell me that like that's going to change. So I feel like me not knowing in the moment, it's like, okay, it should be refreshing to realize that you're never like a finished product and that you can change. But then this also goes back to this other book that I just read that I want to go through too, which is saying that like life is hard work and you're never done. So you kind of have to continue to work to make life what you want it to be. I know that's like kind of a weird transition or tangent, but okay, I'm gonna talk about this book now. It's interesting that I like these self-help books. I think maybe one, because it's like motivating, but then also two, it's like, to me, like psychology is really interesting, or like maybe why people do what they do, or like the invisible like influences that are like our human nature that kind of also affect how we behave or perceive things. But yeah, I feel like most people do not just read these books for fun. But honestly, I don't even seek them out. I think it's just like people will recommend books to me, and then because I like really value these people or like their opinions or think highly of them, I'm like, okay, yeah, I should like read it or give it a chance because they must have told me for some reason. But that's how I started to like read this book, and it was like the second company that I started to work at. So like nobody knows this, but my first job was a startup, and this was right after college, and I worked there for 2 years, and then I got fired, which is, I know, crazy. And then the second company I worked at was like a really small company, like super tiny startup, like just got Series A like seed funding. But the CEO of that company gave me this book because he was like, oh, I think you should read it, or it would be really helpful for you to read. And then I was like, okay. And then I tried reading it and I was like, oh my god, this is such bullshit. Like, the way that everything in this book is phrased is like so dumb. And I just like held on to it because I was like, fuck, I don't want to like in a way let this person down by not reading it, because he was so thoughtful enough to like think of me and give me this book. So I held on to it for like 5 years, took it everywhere I moved, and finally I was like, okay, let me try to read some books, mainly kind of to like get rid of them. And I finally like was open-minded enough to give it a chance. I will say a lot of like how the book is phrased and what put me off before, that was a work chat, is like put me off again, but I was more willing to like read it and like take away what I wanted to take away from it, because I do think like a lot of the messages are valid. It's just like how it phrases it, or like how the authors are like trying to get you to practice what they're preaching in a way is like a little bit like weird, and I wouldn't really agree with it, because it talks about like higher forces and being spiritual, and does make like some religious references, but not in that it's trying to convert you or anything. It's like trying to like get the reader to have faith in something that they cannot see, that is like higher powers, which I don't really believe, but it is really interesting. And there's one thing that I think I do kind of agree with, or in a way that I could like be a little bit more spiritual. Like, there's just one thing that was really interesting, but I will talk about it as I go through everything that I underlined in this book, which might take a while, but it's fine. Okay, just kidding. I'm gonna do it later because I don't want to be late for playing volleyball. And one last thought I have is, it's really dumb because as I'm reading this, I'm like, fuck, I want to give this book to Alex, because I feel like he in a way needs it, because I feel like he's so stuck in the past, like victimizing himself and being like, life just sucks, I'm waiting for it to end and everything's against me and blah 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 blah, like playing high-key victim. And I'm like, dude, you have the power to change your life. Like, you can control so many things and like change, and you don't have to like wallow or sulk because you're 5'9", or because like fuck, like all these things that happen you deem to be unfortunate, you can't see like the silver lining and the bright side. You usually like can't live life moving forward. Like, he's so stuck in the past. But I don't know, a part of me just like couldn't tell him my real feelings. One, because I was so afraid to be myself around him. Two, because like, what's the point of me saying this to him now? Like, I thought there were so many thoughts that I could tell him when we did have that like one talk, but like, I don't like, why should I even care so much? So I kind of like shut down and I didn't really tell him my real thoughts. But yeah, I feel like that's kind of a bad idea for me to be like, oh, here, read this book that I think is also kind of silly, because I know he's also not spiritual or religious or whatever, like has no faith in anything. But yeah, I don't know, he claims he's open-minded, but I don't think he is. Anyways, that's a real big tangent, but I'm so impulsive, and like that part of me like really wants to just like give him this book, but I feel like I should be less like that and like not let my impulses control my actions, unless it's like a positive thing, you know, like telling someone I'm grateful for them, or telling someone that I appreciate them or something nice about them. But this is kind of me trying to help, but I don't know. I don't know what to do. Okay, bye.